Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Conservative Corner. I'm Elliott Margolis, and I'm here with my special guest today, Cain, running for the United States Senate against Elizabeth Warren. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you for having me, Elliott.
Thank you for coming.
Of course.
Of course, the primary is next Tuesday, which is kind of silly when you think about the fact that it's the day after a holiday.
It is, yeah.
But,
people have to make some effort to get there.
That's Massachusetts politics for you. But welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, first of all, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. So my name's Cain. I am a Massachusetts native. Grew up in Quincy, Massachusetts, where I went to the public schools. I attended Boston College High School in Dorchester, graduated from Boston College with a degree in political science in 2004, eventually pursued an MBA at Duke University, graduated in 2013. Over my professional career, I have been involved in private equity and venture capital across a number of spaces, including commercial real estate, energy, technology, and telecom. I've been a Quincy City Councilor for 5 elected terms. I'm currently in my 9th year, and I'm the Quincy City Council President, which I was elected in January by my peers, my colleagues. And for the past 5 years, I've been running an organization that I started in 2019 called Cubic Labs. And Cubic Labs supports entrepreneurs who are getting their tech businesses off the ground. So we provide them with low-cost real estate, strategic advice, and we help them raise capital, all in an effort to create jobs for the Commonwealth.
Well, that sounds interesting. Yeah. That's great. So tell me, why have you decided to run against Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, this is a person that hasn't delivered for Massachusetts. We've watched a person very much use Massachusetts in our Senate seat to propel her own celebrity. She's been in there for 2 terms, 12 years, and there isn't much that you can point to that has been a success. Yes, she's a loud voice. She's certainly a person that can catch a headline, but that's how she plays because she's clearly an ineffective legislator, representing the voice of the people to the legislative body in the United States government. This is a person that has even eroded some of the power of the legislative body because she has had to exact her policy outcomes through the executive branch, through the regulatory and the bureaucracy. She also calls for things like expanding the Supreme Court because the rules or the game doesn't work out in her favor. So Massachusetts is looking for representation, and we're seeking to bring that. And it's about ushering in the next generation of leadership. Somebody that has come from the grassroots, representing people on the ground floor, knowing how to, not only connect with people, you're representing your family, your friends, and your neighbors, and you're agreeing with them and disagreeing with them on many different issues. But that experience is replicable across 351 cities and towns, and being able to build partnerships, work collaboratively, instead of being divisive. She is one of the most divisive members of the United States Congress. And because she's so partisan and sits on that left side and sort of puts her stake in the ground, she's ineffective. So we're looking for change.
Well, my opinion, she's also a hypocrite.
Okay.
How can you say the cost of education is too expensive when you teach one class for $350,000 a year? Well, of course it's expensive. So, but I also find that she's anti-Semitic.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
I think she's been on the wrong side of, I know that she's been not supportive of Jewish Americans, and she hasn't been supportive to the Israeli cause. We put out something through our campaign about a very pro-Hamas conference that she was going to take part in and backed out at the last minute that she was going to be speaking to. And, she's come out and said that whatever's going on in the Middle East, Israel's right to defend itself is a genocide, which I do not agree with. And I've been speaking to people in Massachusetts who have felt abandoned by Elizabeth Warren. And these are traditional Democrats who would probably seek to be supported in a party that they feel comfortable, but are now seeking other options because she's off the reservation on this issue.
Okay. You're right, she's quite divisive, and she's always party line. If you remember back when Ronald Reagan was president, okay, Ronald Reagan had a terrific relationship with Tip O'Neill. Mm-hmm. Things got done.
Yes.
Bill Clinton had a good relationship with Newt Gingrich. Mm-hmm. Things got done.
Right.
Now, if you're a Democrat, you hate all Republicans. If you're a Republican, you hate all Democrats. I mean, how can you legislate that way?
You can't. And I'm not here to play that game, right? I have been in different parts of my life a Republican voter, an independent voter, a Democratic voter. But at the end of the day, I know how to work collaboratively with people. And that is demonstrated in my work working in a legislative body in the city of Quincy, in the work that I do every day. And I use that reference all the time about Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, because that is the standard. That is the gold standard of collaboration, right? Even though you don't agree on every issue, you still have to make sure that you're working for the American people at the end of the day. That's the brand that I seek to bring back to the United States.
See, that's another one of my pet peeves, so to speak, is I don't know for sure, but I would have to say that every issue that the Democrats believe in may not necessarily be the best for the country. Every issue that the Republicans believe in may not be the best for the country.
Right.
But if it's sort of like the he said, she said type of thing, somewhere in the middle is the truth.
Yeah.
And if you can't collaborate together, talk, compromise, I look at politics, the definition is the art of compromise. And I don't see it in Washington right now. Washington is broken.
Yeah.
What do you think you can do to fix it?
So, if I'm fortunate to get through this primary and to go on to the final election, have a chance to beat Elizabeth Warren, I need to find people that are similarly willing to work collaboratively, right? And that's going to take some time. You got to understand the ropes. You got to understand the lay of the land, see who's trying to accomplish what. But the one thing that stands out from something that you just brought up is that, I think most people are now, because the need to engage in politics, I think, has it's diminished. Or it takes a lot for them to pay attention that we have, bifurcated every issue. So you're either on one side or you're on the other side. And then there's no ability to have a conversation about nuance or within that gray territory. And so also, it's all about emotion. And that's what's really bringing people to pay attention. And there's a huge crowd of people in the middle that are probably either tepid or a little uncomfortable for standing out and trying to say something because these voices are so loud. And so, but there's a whole host of issues that are being neglected that are really getting down to the brass tacks of how we can improve, empower, enrich people's lives, make them more productive. And that's a lot around the economy, right? In Massachusetts right now, the number one issue that we are faced, and that's irrespective of your political parties, around illegal immigration and the migrant issue, which we can certainly get into. And then it's the economy. All you hear every day is about cost of living and how housing prices are going up, the rise in inflation, people not being able to afford their grocery bills. Now, why aren't we just pointedly, collectively together working on solving those problems instead of making them divisive political issues to get elected?
Well, I had a situation with a bank not that long ago, and their rules say certain things, and it was against what I wanted. So I went into the vice president's office and I said, look, here's the deal. I'm not leaving here until I get my way. If the president of the United States doesn't have to follow the laws of the land and Congress doesn't have to follow the laws of the land, I don't care about your rules. And, that's what we're getting into now is we have a governor in Massachusetts who doesn't care about illegals, and she's a lawyer. So she's taking buses away from the town of Stoughton so that she can bring kids in, illegals in, to get educated. Isn't that killing our education system?
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. That's certainly part of it. I think the other part is that we've got a shelter system that's overwhelmed, and we're leaving behind our most vulnerable residents of Massachusetts and citizens of the United States. I think there's two concepts that are overarching, I think, about this year's campaign cycle. And one of them is about fairness, because I think you just said why, are particular people not having to abide by the laws of the land. And that's what's going on here, is that a group of people have come from destinations unknown into now our state, making Massachusetts a border state, and they're being rewarded for coming here, right? They're being essentially compensated for their food and their lodging, et cetera, and now education. And that's not right, because that's not setting a good precedent. right? That's saying that, okay, that's fine. You don't have to follow these rules, but other people do have to follow these rules, especially other people who are trying to come through the right way. So, but that's a failure of state government right now because there's a right to shelter law that needs to be amended. But it's also a failure of the federal government for not coming up with a piece of comprehensive legislation that would get to the heart of the problem, which is closing the border, making sure states like Massachusetts cannot designate themselves as sanctuary status or with this right to shelter to keep people in place, making sure that we're not abusing the asylum program, making sure that we're penalizing employers who are employing illegal immigrants, and then adjudicating the backlog of people who have come through either the border or other pathways, and then finding a place where legal pathways can exist for those who want to come here.
I don't object to employers hiring illegals for one reason. If the government is letting them in for free, why can't you pay them and not have to pay the taxes on, I understand that rationale because it's the government's fault. And the government is being run by Democrats. So, we need, like in Massachusetts, we need more Republicans in office.
We do, and I think it's a misnomer that people say that Massachusetts is a Democratic state. I think that, yes, the elected seats, the majority of the legislative seats in the State House, all of the constitutional offices, all of the federal seats are held by Democrats, but the majority of the voting populace sits in the independent, unenrolled, or non-party affiliated area. So that is either they do not want to be a Democrat, or, as I say, it hasn't become fashionable yet to become a Republican. And that's part of this. Because I think, even especially with young people, I walk into a lot of rooms, Republican town committees, and it's older folks, which is fine, but we need to build a bench. We need to appeal to young people.
Yeah.
They're the future. And, there's a couple of sort of demographic things that are going on in Massachusetts because most likely, this is just a hypothesis, but it's documented that on average 39,000 people are leaving Massachusetts per year, and this is since 2013. And the greatest portion of those people that are leaving are from the ages of 25 to 40, and they're six-figure salary earners, and they're deciding to go elsewhere. They're going to Florida, they're going to Texas, they're going to Tennessee, they're going to New Hampshire, and also the other adverse effects of the millionaire's tax. People are leaving the state too because they don't want to pay here. And the top three reasons why that age bracket are leaving are because of high cost of housing, high cost of health care, and taxes. Okay, so I would think that the Republican Party, we need to rally around a couple of key issues, and I think those issues could be as simple as common sense, pragmatism, practicality. Bring back a sense of normalcy to the state, so that you can start to attract some of that middle group who I firmly believe are being disenfranchised by the Democrats and the way that the elected Democrats have been taking us, way far off here in Massachusetts.
All right, let's talk about a few issues now. First of all, let's talk about the Ukraine. Where are you compared to Elizabeth Warren on the Ukraine?
So, the Ukraine, while at first look was probably a worthwhile effort to stave off Russian influence in that territory, I now see that as a boon gone too far. And I think that, there has been considerable loss of life. And, we don't talk about that loss of life because it's not American lives, but there have been considerable hundreds of thousands of lives lost in this effort, and a considerable amount of money that the U.S. has sent over there. So I think that in any further action that's to be taken or support that's to be given, there needs to be very pointed, and measured sort of strategy around the funding mechanism and making sure that it doesn't continue to get any worse than it has.
Do you see any of the weapons that we left in Afghanistan being used against, say, Ukraine or in the Middle East?
I mean, I'm sure anything is possible. I think that I don't want to comment on things I'm not too educated around. I know that situation happened. I don't firmly know why that happened. On face value, it seems like a very poor decision to just wholesale leave military assets in a foreign jurisdiction of a place that was once you were fighting a battle there. But I think anything's possible. I would think that any enterprising, opponent or enemy of our own state would be certainly willing to put those assets back on a market that could somehow detrimentally affect us down the road.
Now, speaking of the Middle East, though, Iran is clearly paying Hezbollah and Hamas to attack Israel. They've attacked the United States areas, and a number of our soldiers have been hurt. Fortunately, I don't think any have been killed, but we haven't had a response. What do you think we should respond to that? How we should respond to that?
I think, one, it's a tense situation, right? Because we've got we've got more allies over there now than we probably did before. Obviously, we've got situations in Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, of course, our main ally, Israel, over there. And I think it's something that deserves to be looked at more acutely, especially if things do escalate. So what is a proper response? I don't have an answer for you on that, but I just know that this is one of the areas of the world that we need to be paying much closer attention to make sure that not only our allies are protected, but there aren't any further threats to us domestically.
All right. How do you feel about the pipeline that Trump started and Biden cut?
Yeah. So I worked in the energy industry for a number of years, and I firmly believe in what I say. I worked in the power industry, so I firmly believe in baseload power generation needs, which I think we lack in this country. I think we've gone in this direction of pursuing the Green New Deal wholesale, but haven't really filled in the spaces where we need to make up for some of the capacity constraints in the United States domestic market. So I'm certainly for the continue. In fact, we put out a policy piece yesterday. President Trump was mentioning something about expansion of nuclear capacity as well as expanding natural gas. And I firmly agree with that. I think that we should be looking into more domestic production in order to alleviate our dependence on foreign supplies, but then also expand the cleaner, much further developed nuclear capacity. In Massachusetts, we live in a very fragile grid. We have decommissioned nuclear power plants that used to supply considerable amount of electricity to our local markets, and now we get a lot of our power from the hydroelectric plants up in Canada. And so, it's time that we are focused on figuring out, instead of putting these, offshore wind farms, which are sort of causing disaster on our coastal communities, we need to figure out how to have more reliable fuel supply as well as electricity capacity.
Electric cars.
Yeah, I'm kind of whatever about an electric car. I think it's I think that it's part of this green agenda. The energy will come from somewhere. It's the electricity will come from somewhere. It will be powered by some fuel source. And so I think at the end of the day, while the emissions might be reduced in some of these cars that are produced, the power is still generated from somewhere to power that car. And so, I'm fine. Again, I think both of these situations represent some incremental process by which we're not there yet. I think we're trying to jump a few steps before we create that incremental supply or even the storage capacity to power everything with electricity. But, I like personally, I'm fine with combustion engines. I like cars work well the way that they do. And I also, as I cook at home, I want natural gas in my house. I don't want to cook with electricity. It's just a very different experience.
Well, the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
But
it's business, though, at the end of the day, too. So these things, are making opportunities for different companies to create, produce, and sell new things to consumers.
But we're buying a lot of stuff from China for the electric cars.
Absolutely.
And we've been selling a lot of land to China, and one could argue that they're buying the land to spy on our military and different things. How do you feel about continually buying from China and selling them our property?
So I don't think they need to buy the land to spy on us domestically because, anecdotally, I've learned a little bit about the cybersecurity industry here, which have thousands of open jobs. So one of the things that I'm really focused on is trying to figure out alternative pathways to prosperity for young people. So, we currently mostly guide our young people to mortgage their young life away at 17 or 18 to go to college or university, and then they have false starts at every point in life after. For those that aren't necessarily committed to the college path, there are opportunities to develop short-term training programs that could fulfill open roles in cybersecurity, fiber techs, trades, right? Places that could allow you a wage that can meet cost of living. And so, but what I hear, though, in the cybersecurity space right now is there are already domestic threats. There are a lot of national Chinese that are coming here and being trained in the U.S., and there are domestic in the U.S. sleeper cells that can easily penetrate us, despite the land. But this is decades in the making of our sort of intertwined economies, right? It starts with a lot of foreign investment that was directed through our pension funds, probably in the late 90s, that was sent over to China to start building up their real estate and to create their sort of consumer economy that we now know today. And so they're still producing things that we're buying. So unless we're changing, supply chains, right, which I think we should be doing and having more domestic production, again, getting America back to a more productive, prosperous place where we're relying on our own to produce and sell products and goods.
Social Security. Now, it seems to me, and I could be wrong, that some of our Social Security money is going to illegals. And that's hurting retired people, because all you hear all the time is, gee, Social Security is going to run out of money. How can we shore up Social Security and make sure that our seniors and the future seniors are going to have that retirement money?
Right. I can't speculate on the illegals receiving Social Security, but if you have any information on that, I'm happy to take a look. But that's a priority. I mean, making sure that we're fulfilling our obligations to the people who've paid into that system for decades and generations. And of course, there are some risks, but I think that is a fundamental priority to continue funding that. I'm sure at some point down the line there will need to be a relook or reconstitution of how the relationship with Social Security works, because as we are coming to a point where our liabilities within the federal government are probably going to outstrip the current supply. And so, but I think, again, that is a priority to make sure that our seniors and folks who've paid into that system are getting their due.
Well, isn't there a maximum, like if you're making like $125,000, you pay Social Security on that, but anything over that you don't? Wouldn't it make sense to have Social Security, you pay for it no matter how much you make?
That would make sense. Yeah, that would very much make sense. The other thing that I have been anecdotally hearing on the campaign trail is about folks who have worked in state-level jobs that have been capped for their Social Security compensation because of state rules, which I guess need to be changed. So there's certainly something that needs to be looked in there too.
Congress makes rules for us, but the rules for them are different. And the question is, any kind of a law that passes in Congress, shouldn't that affect the people in Congress as well?
Yeah, what in particular?
Like, for instance, health care. You're in health. Once you're in Congress, your health care is paid for life, and it's better than Obamacare or any other care that we can buy. Why is that Congress can do that for themselves, but they don't care about the people in this country?
Well, healthcare deserves, it deserves a lot of attention, right? Because you get solutions that are provided 100% government funded, 100% private funded, and all in between. I think what we're looking at now is that healthcare consumption or deliverability of services is rapidly changing. Unfortunately, you're seeing situations where acute care hospitals in cities and towns in Massachusetts are going away. You see the pop-up of these urgent care facilities. So, there's the sort of finding the place where you're figuring out how people are consuming healthcare services, but then being able to compensate them for the services that they need through various insurance. And I think insurance is one of the biggest problems here, right? And so we need to figure out here, how can we make sure that we are taking care of our Americans, but giving them the options that they need? And I think, like most things, it'll end up being a continued mix of private and public, depending on where you are in life.
And another thing that kind of gets me a little cranky. When you served a full term in Congress, you get a hell of a pension. Okay, people who are paying for that pension don't get that benefit. Can that change, or should that change? And would you be interested in changing it?
Yeah, I'm fine to take a look at things like that. I think those constant term limits and changing the
term limits.
You know, I'm fine to look at that. I think, you know, and please don't get me wrong, I am fine with the term limit. I think those make sense. I also think people like to hear that too, and I think you'd be hard pressed to actually pass such a thing in Congress. I think the thing that's more egregious is members of Congress and their ability to trade off of information, privy information. You know, you do see members of Congress who their net worth has, you know, considerably rise during their tenure in office, and I think that there are some some procedures that should be put in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. That's not right.
I like that one.
Yeah.
All right, so there's 2 minutes left.
Sure.
Talk to the people. Tell them why they should vote for you next Tuesday in the Republican primary.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you again, Elliott, for having me today, and I'm so glad that I could connect with your audience. So we've got a primary next Tuesday, September 3rd, and I'm humbly asking for your vote. In this primary election, I'm the only Massachusetts native with demonstrated experience serving in government. I've been a legislator for 9 years in the Quincy City Council, and I'm also representative of the next generation of leadership. This, for me, is about youth, energy, enthusiasm, innovation, and providing a vision for not only our young people, but connecting our history to our future and making sure that we're doing the best for Massachusetts. We've had a senator that has sat in our seat for 12 years, and she's let us down. You know, she hasn't been there for us, and I think she's very much out of touch with what's going on. She's been silent on illegal immigration. She has been negligent in her duties to find better ways to support the growth of our economy here in Massachusetts and across the country. So it's time for new leadership, and I hope you'll consider me on Tuesday, September 3rd.
Okay, well, thank you for coming.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Appreciate
stating
it.
your case. And once the primary is over and you win the primary, I'd love to have you back again.
Love to come back.
For the final election.
Okay, great.
All right?
All right.
That would be great. I hope this was educational for you. I hope you learned something. And, you know, you got to get out and vote next Tuesday. That's the most important thing. Get out and vote. And Ian Cain is a candidate for the United States Senate against Elizabeth Warren. You need to take a Republican ballot, so I guess you could say this is for Republicans and independents.
That's true.
Because the Democrats, you can vote for him in the final election, but you can't vote for him in the primary. Thanks for watching.